Tony Britt Spotter Charts serves sports media exclusively with customized cheat sheets for both prep and game time. Serving over 350 clients at all major networks, 23 NFL teams, and 68 college football programs, including Division II, Division III, and NAIA schools. Variable pricing ensures that small schools receive the same VIP service as ABC, CBS, ESPN, Fox, NBC, and the NFL Network.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Voices in the Stands. I am joined by the Misfits, two of which look to have thawed out from yesterday's tundra experiences in both Illinois and Wisconsin. Mikey and crew are here, so we're going to talk to them about everything they covered in D3 spread option this past week, everything they plan to cover this week. But before we get into that, we're going to do something a little different now that we're in the third round. Johns Hopkins is the only team off the board. Tony took them. If they make it all the way, he doesn't have to donate anything to QBs for Cancer, although I assume he probably would. If they don't, whenever they get eliminated, he automatically makes a donation to QBs for Cancer or versus Cancer for whoever's name. It could be Utica or whatever, but it's a $10 bet on Hopkins being the team that runs the table. Josh, thankfully, took the time right before the show started to put together a draft order. And conveniently, the number one person for the first pick in our draft for the third round, he's down there right next to Josh. I wonder who he's going to put his $10 on. I think the suspense is going to kill everybody. But David, who do you got? Who are you putting your $10 on there, friend? Tough one, I know.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna dig deep here, and I'm gonna go with one of those teams that the NPI kind of doesn't seem to want to put at the top, and I think I'll go with the North Central College Cardinals.
I think that was a very elongated way of telling us what we already knew, but I appreciate that you and this MPI thing, I have a feeling this offseason you're going to deep dive into it. We're going to have all the facts and stats and everything. You and Logan Hansen could maybe get together and start colluding against the MPI. I don't know. I'm up. I'm going to take a school from Wisconsin. I think it's the Top Gun offense. Plus, I kind of assumed that the two people that also are affiliated to the WIAC were going to lean that way. So that's where I'm going. Sorry, Josh. I'm sorry, but I had to do it. But that brings us to Mikey. So I'm taking the River Falls. That's who I'm taking. So, Mikey, you're up. River Falls, Hopkins, and North Central off the board.
Well, 4 teams off the board, and the Purple Raiders are still there. I'll take Mountain Union. The most obvious pick of all time, Mikey Maloney and company. That's a good pick.
It's a solid pick to have. Unfortunately, I think you'll be making a donation after the Final Four. Next up, Josh.
Well, you took that one. Mount Union's off the board. I'll go with Bethel. Love to see the WIAC schools represent after mine dropped out, but I think La Crosse is going down. I think Platteville's going down. I think River Falls is the best option remaining, so I'll go with the Royals, and maybe David and I will have a slugfest if we both make it out of that third round.
Matthew?
Of course, Josh, you had to take it. I was going to go Bethel, man. I was the one in the group chat that said, North Central will not be in the championship this year, and I was betting on the Royals there from Bethel to overtake there. So, well, shit. Okay, well that fucked me over. So, give me Susquehanna.
Ooh, that's a good take. It's a good take. And then Cooper, what do you got?
Yeah, 2 teams left that I really like, but I've got to pick one. I'm down between John Carroll and DePauw, but man, no, not to hurt anybody's feelings, but I really fell in love with this DePaul team last week. Really impressive team. Love the way they play defense. Front seven is just awesome. One of the best in the country. And the balancers are, I think they'll look even better if they don't have to deal with some weather. So I think it's a dangerous team. Already beat Whitewater. So if they take care of Wheaton this week, then they'll get their shot at the best team in the WIAC. That'll be interesting, but I think people could. I think they could be a little bit of a sleeper and potentially be a semifinal team.
All right. So we all have our teams. We know the rules. When your team is eliminated, you have a couple days. Obviously, you don't have to immediately run to your computer and hit a donation. We just know that we owe $10 to QBs versus Cancer, which is the proud partner with you guys over there at the D3 spread option. But Matt, let's roll into this.
Hey, thanks, guys. First of all, want to give a big shout out to my Voices in the Stands crew. Thank you guys for all the support. There's been some family stuff going on. I haven't really been able to kind of keep engaged, and the support I got from the crew was much appreciated. And thank you for everyone who sent out their kind of wishes and prayers on the side and knew what's going on. So I really appreciate that. But today is really about football, and what a day it was for D3 football across the board. I'm telling you, it was some great games. I was really excited to kind of get back in the mix a little bit on all the games that were kind of going out. So you guys are usually used to me talking about E8 football. I ain't got nothing for you because there's nothing E8 football to talk about, unfortunately. But let's talk about some Region 2 games, and I'm going to focus your attention on the bottom right quadrant, formerly known as the Christopher Newport quadrant. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the first game I'm going to go over is the Susquehanna versus Newport game. Listen, no spoiler alert here. You know what happened. Susquehanna avenged their week 4 regular season and got back at Christopher Newport. Susquehanna opened up 7-zip after facing a 3rd and 4th from their own 28, and they capitalized on that and went down the field and scored. It was 21-7 at the half. Kind of started to think it was going to be that type of game, but it did get a little bit interesting towards the second half. A lot more scoring. Total yards here was 418 to 313 in the favor of Susquehanna. The big asterisk I put here in my notes, CNU with 3 turnovers. Yikes. Time of possession, Susquehanna with just over 35 minutes and Christopher Newport just under 25 minutes. And when your opponent holds on to the ball for that long and you cough it up 3 times versus none, it's really hard to come back from that type of adversity. 42-28 here, the final. Now Susquehanna goes on to take on Eastern on their next kind of battle, so congratulations to them. Next game I wanted to talk about, Endicott versus Salisbury. The Battle of the Gulls, probably one of my most favorite games of the day. Both offenses started out the game with 3 and out on their first possessions, and you started to kind of think to yourself, wow, is this going to be a nail biter? Is this going to be one of those types of games? And Salisbury comes back and scores on their second drive, and they go up 7-zip. All right, so you start to kind of see, who's going to flex a little bit. Endicott capitalizes on a pick, and they pull within 6 points, and the score is now 13-7 at this point. But Salisbury answers. They make it 20-7, and at the half, again, you're starting to kind of feel the momentum shift a little bit, predominantly in Salisbury's answer, or when Salisbury answered that. And they really kind of start to see a little bit like, wow, it's starting to favor these guys. But not over yet, folks. Endicott with back-to-back scores in the second half, and all of a sudden they lead 21-20, and the pendulum swings the other way. Salisbury does not stay quiet, though. They go up 28-21, and again, you start to feel that pendulum swing a little bit. But a muff pump by Salisbury, and then Endicott ties the game 28-28. Holy cow, this was starting to feel like a nail biter just the way it kind of started off at. But Salisbury drives the field and scores, and the defense stands tall to ultimately 35-28 final, folks. Total yards 435 to 456 in Salisbury's favor. It was kind of even there, but the big difference here, Salisbury pounded the rock with 359 rushing yards, and Endicott had more of a balanced game, 246 passing through the air and 189 rushing. But now Salisbury, congratulations to you, and your grand prize is you're gonna go see the big boys, Johns Hopkins. Good luck with that. And in the third game that I'm covering here, Springfield versus Johns Hopkins. For Springfield, after one play, 56-yard rush to the Blue Jays 17, and they end up scoring on that drive 7-zip. You're starting to think, is the triple option too much for the Blue Jays? But Springfield doesn't even score again until the fourth quarter at that point. So I kind of want to say that Johns Hopkins figured it out. Their defense figured it out. And Johns Hopkins offense scores 3 straight times in the first half. This was in the pocket at that point, folks. I'll be honest with you. Last 10 minutes of the game, nothing was in jeopardy for Johns Hopkins. This ended up in a 34-14 final. Total yards was 224 to 357 for Johns Hopkins. The big standout stat here, the first downs. Johns Hopkins dominated first downs, 22 first downs versus Springfield's 9. So now Johns Hopkins is going to take on Salisbury in the next round. And folks, what a great day for football. Tons of stuff going on. There was snow in some games. It was a great day for football. I know my boys are going to sit there and give you the rest of it. I'm excited. I'll be back live in the studios. Well, not live, our type of live, in the Voices in the Stands studios. I'll see you next week. I miss you guys. Take care.
Tony, not with us again this week. He has some things going on with family. He's in our thoughts and our prayers as a group. Let him get his stuff taken care of. Hopefully we'll see him back next week. But Josh and I are going to lead things off for you. I'm going to let Josh give his 24-hour post recap now that it's kind of set in, and then I will give my opinions on some of the other games.
Yeah, that was obviously a tough one at the Perk. DePaul had a real good following. The weather affected both teams, seemed to affect the Tigers a little bit less than the Warhawks. Really disappointed in the pound the rock mantra that Whitewater has built itself on the last few years. And I know a lot was made about the Tigers, rush defense, right? And really good, 12 yards a game, all they're giving up. But offensive line didn't get any push. Linebackers filled all the gaps. Whitewater running for 20 total yards. That's kind of embarrassing. No matter what defense you are going against and how good they are, we talk about, a team that plays in a different conference has never played us, or River Falls can say that, or Platteville can say that, or La Crosse can say that, they haven't played us yet. And that usually means to us that you can throw those statistics out, but they lived up to every bit of what was on paper and what they've done all season. And you have to give them credit. They did great. I was particularly impressed with one of their DNs, Luke Nolan. He was an absolute force, whether it was coming down the line of scrimmage, blowing up the tackle. He sacked our quarterback for, I think, a 12-yard loss just when we started to get something going. But, we went to the air probably too little too late. Seemed like we were bent on breaking that rush defense, and it never happened. Last play, interception. I thought we were going to go down. I thought we were going to win the game. Down 3. It was 26-23. We had just scored on the drive before 3 plays. One of them was an incompletion, but 2 passes, one for 20, one for 45, and we were in the end zone. And we really thought that was going to be the outcome, that we're going to put together another one of those drives coming out of the 2-minute. I think it was 2nd and 1. Heard from some other people they didn't like the fact that we tried to run for that, but we were out of timeouts. and we're at midfield. So, you kind of got to throw. And since DePauw's offense generally wasn't that explosive all day, they had, I think, 3 scoring drives that were over 10 plays. They hung onto the ball, and they just ran it and passed it right down our throats. That was a tough defensive effort from us. Not what we're capable of. We didn't tackle that well. We didn't square up that well. A lot of glancing blows. The 2 running backs were really good. I don't think we got burned on too much stuff, maybe 1 or 2 things that were really bad, but they made plays, man. They made plays and we didn't. And that's what happened. Listen to Coach Rindle at the end of the press conference, got a little emotional afterwards, which of course when your season ends and you're playing at home and you say goodbye to a group of seniors, every coach should be emotional, right? Everything just comes to a sudden screeching halt and you're starting to figure out what you got to do for next season already within a span of, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whenever it starts to sink in. So tough one. Still not happy about it. And I'm not one that likes to complain about officiating. A lot of garbage calls. Given the conditions, there were a couple of quarterback slides that our guys did not target the quarterback, but you have to recognize the conditions. It was a crew from the MIAC. And our guys basically fell on him because they couldn't come to a screeching halt. They didn't try and lower their head. They didn't try and deliver a blow. They more or less just fell on him. You had one official in particular that threw 3 out of the 5 flags. One was from about 30 yards away. Pass interference was a maybe, but that one, the 2 quarterback slides were absolutely ridiculous. So didn't like that, but again, can't put yourself in that position. Officials didn't cause you to lose the game, but 100 yards in penalties, that's not going to help you come back to win. So it is what it is. Give DePauw credit. They were jacked up, right? I thought there maybe was a little too much taunting going on after some tackles, like standing over guys and looking and talking trash, and that's not what Whitewater does. That's not what I'm a believer in. I let the play do the talking, and I thought that was a little much from them. I'm a little surprised there wasn't even some warnings or maybe 1 flag on the couple of times that it happened, but it is what it is. So now we got to look forward to the banquet. Got a lot of good seniors to replace.
Well, and you pointed it out a couple weeks ago that I had brought up the AQ and do we need to look at that differently and how this all works out. I think this week was a prime example of seeing that stuff does work itself out. I think it's, again, a very balanced bracket. I think Whitewater DePauw is a great game. I want to go back to what Mikey said last week. That whole bracket, it was the biggest winners losers bracket. The next game I'm going to talk about was the prime example of what Mikey was talking about, but he also hinted at this game, DePauw and Whitewater. Whitewater gets to host a playoff game, and who comes to town? DePauw, not a slouch DePauw. I mean, their loss comes to they had a loss to John Carroll, and they had a questionable game against a good Denison football team this year. Everything else, I mean, I think DePauw has shown people on deep they're a good ball club. I think from the stuff that we've talked. Oh, go ahead.
Well, we were looking at some of the NPI rankings at the beginning with our charts, and I wish I had saved it, but there were very, very few quality teams on DePauw's schedule. So it maybe skewed those numbers a little bit, which you kind of question. All right, how good is this team? I mean, I think Oberlin College was 238 out of 241, right? And they had 2 rushing yards or minus or whatever. Like there was a lot of teams in the hundreds and a couple in the 200s. They had probably 3 games under 100 in the NPI. John Carroll, Oberlin, or Denison, like you said, and there was, I think, Wabash. Right?
Wabash.
So it's like, yeah. So it's like you didn't play that many great teams during the season. So those statistics that you put on paper, and you can talk about that at the D1 level. You can talk about that at the NFL. Like, who have you played? What's your resume? But I think they played just as good and just as well as what they had put on paper coming into this game.
Well, and then the other game that we talked about, or that Mikey talked about last week when we talked about the winner's bracket of how this was going to play out, was up there in Waverly, Wartburg and Wheaton. And I'm going to start this so that it can be full transparency, even though the guys in the group already know. I did not put Wheaton in my top 25 one time this whole season. I will be the first one to tell you that from the eye test of their 2 losses, I understood who their 2 losses were. I understood that we watched them in week 1 play Mount Union, who's probably the second best team in the country, maybe the first best team in the country, although I think those people from Naperville, which I happened to see up close and personal, against Wheaton. I think Wheaton's a good football team. I think Wheaton was a 26, 27, 28 when I would do my rankings. That being said, I also picked them to be the surprise with quick hits. Talking with the D3.com guys, talking with Mikey, I had Wheaton as, all right, well, if they, obviously the crown win was what we all expected it to be. The circled game was Wartburg. They get past Wartburg, their side of the bracket looks a lot better until they inevitably have to run into River Falls. This is a team that could go on a run, and they handled themselves pretty well yesterday against a very good Wartburg defense. That final drive, you left, I want to say maybe 26, 22 seconds, somewhere in that realm, after going in for the go-ahead score, with a Wartburg team that can throw the ball. It's not their strength. It's not what they want to do. They want to be able to run the ball down the field and take as much time off the clock. And I think when you put them in a situation where they have to go score, you have a problem. You see that's just not the way that Wartburg team's built. And now you got Wheaton advancing, you have DePaul advancing. I think that's a great matchup. I would guess the D3 spread option guys are going to tell us that right now, as things look, I would probably put Wheaton as a 3-point favorite. That would guess. Wheaton throws the ball. Wheaton throws the ball very. They also run the ball very well, and they play really good defense from the edges, and in their secondary. Some of those other games, though, I think Hopkins did exactly what everybody kind of expected Hopkins to do. This was a nice win on paper or on tape after the loss to Franklin and Marshall. Franklin and Marshall losing to Eastern. Eastern getting a home game against Susquehanna now. Susquehanna, Josh, you may have hinted off camera that it's possible Susquehanna is going to win 3 straight road games here. And again, I would say if you're doing the spreads, I would probably put Susquehanna as a 3.5 point favorite. I mean, you got to go on the road, but right now this Susquehanna team's playing really good football. The big surprise for me was Endicott. I think Endicott gave Salisbury a hell of a football game. I think people should, that's not a thing to hang their hat on. You want to win and move on, but for the Conference of New England to take on the second best team in the NJAC and play it as close as they came, hats off to that team. North Central really looked like they had a blast. I'm sure David will cover that. And then the other game that stood out to me was Hardin Simmons, still looking for a playoff win in recent history. And hats off to Trinity. It's going to be the only rematch that we get. This past week it was Christopher Newport and Susquehanna was a rematch. This week you're going to get Trinity and Barry. And Barry ran away with it 3 weeks ago, whenever that game was. So that's a game that we're going to keep on the radar. And then I thought, Matt's or your pick, Bethel. Oh, man, did they let go back into it for a little bit, but then really turned it up on them. So that's all I have for right now. I'm interested in your final thoughts when they come around.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll say about the Whitewater DePaul thing, watching the Wheaton, because we had the scoreboard up in the booth at Perkins, we were watching everything, and the unfortunate thing is how the Wheaton Wartburg game played out, right? That would have meant that if we could have one, we would have hosted another game, which, hopefully better conditions, but Wheaton's offense looks a little bit more balanced. The defense looks like we could probably attack that a little bit better. We are not, Whitewater is not a downfield passing team, and that's why probably, I'm going to agree with you, probably Wheaton has got to be the favorite, even though they're going to go on the road to Greencastle to play the Tigers. You had talked about some rematches and some tip of the caps. I got to give a tip of the cap to LaGrange and a rematch with Barry, because that was 48-0 at the beginning, earlier in the season, and it was a 4-point game. I think it was 18-14. I thought it was going to be a massacre, but LaGrange showed up. The Vikings were able to win, but tip of the cap to them, because going in and you got your doors blown off by them earlier in the season, and now your season's on the line. I thought they put up a real good fight. That was no silver lining, right? No points for coming in second in an elimination game, but tip of the cap to LaGrange. So that's all I have.
Absolutely. I guess we can send it to the CCIW guys. I'm sure that David is going to give us an accurate weather report of what it was like there. Mikey, pay attention when David's talking, because he's going to show you how to do a weather report. And I'm sure Matthew is going to fill us in on the games that he watched. So CCIW guys, go ahead, take it away. You guys should be riding.
Nope, and I kind of cut him off there a little early. Sorry, Carlo. Got the little click happy.
You may be the target of his what's his phrase? That he
kiss
says?
My ass. Well, kiss my ass, Carlo. I'm the producer. Kiss my ass. No, just kidding. I can see him offline over here, like, oh, geez, no. I can see everything that goes on over there. All right. Anyway, I can't hear what he's saying, but I can hear him saying several kiss my ass, it looks like. Anyway, all right. So I watched a couple of games. I was here at home and I was trying to keep both my driveway somewhat snow-free, and my neighbors as well, who was out of town. So trying to do some yeoman's work, here locally. But so, one of the games I paid probably a little bit more attention to than anything was the Wheaton game. One, because I wanted to see, it's your second team, playoff team from the CCIW up against the ARC, conference champion. And I was really wanting to see the CCIW in the ARC. I mean, I'd love to see, Co, and I'd love to see Wartburg, play some more of our teams, Augie, Wheaton, North Central, not these non-conference games. We used to play Co a few times. It's probably been 4 or 5 years, but, and then Hansen ratings, as I was looking at that game, had the Thunder favored 30-24, 30-25. And Wheaton came out ahead 28-24 in this snowy, blizzardy Midwest. They're in Waverly, Iowa. And, as I was kind of looking down through this game, I mean, Wartburg, they struck first. And they took that 7-0 lead early on, including they had a big 55-yard run by Dawson Rudd. But he had 167 yards on the ground, averaged 8 yards a carry. It was 1 yard less than what Leo Dodd threw through the air on 16 for 29. Wheaton responded with a long kind of 15-play drive. They tied it up, there in the first quarter. And then Wartburg recovered a fumble in the end zone for a touchdown. I'm like, this is going to be a day of fumbles. I think there was 4 total on the day, but only, I believe, Wheaton lost that one. And then the extra point, I believe, was blocked. And then at halftime, Wartburg led 16-7 after a field goal, which I cannot imagine. I was surprised with the amount of field goals I saw up and down the Midwest. So what I don't know is if they were allowing them to switch the balls, prior to the kick, because goddamn, that had to hurt. That ball had to be a brick. I mean, you could just see in how that ball was, as they were trying to catch it. And I was pleasantly surprised across the Midwest and a lot of the snowy games how much some of these teams were passing it, but a lot of them were those like mesh routes, 5 yards short, kind of safe throws. But it was really all about, runs after the catch, what I saw. But, and then, as we were going into that halftime, I'm like, man, Wheaton threw an interception at 8:09. They were, when they were down 7-13. Plus, they had 2 unnecessary roughness penalties, so it kind of felt like Wartburg's game. And then, what does Wheaton do? They're a great second half team. Rallied in the second half, 2 touchdown runs by Matt Kreider and Riley Howard, and that took their lead to 21-16. Wartburg answered again. And then with under like 30 seconds left, I believe it was, Kreider scored his 3rd touchdown run, and that was ultimately the 28-24. But it came down to the last play, in a potential game-winning touchdown pass as, time kind of expired, and as it got kind of knocked up again, then finally someone from Wheaton, I think, came through and volleyball spiked that thing out of the back of the end zone, and that thing just went pew. I'm like, oh, that's because wasn't it Wartburg several years ago that had that touchdown pass that bounced off the helmet and they caught it in the end zone? Wasn't it them?
I remember there being a Mount Union play like that. I can't recall a Wartburg play like that, but not to say that it didn't happen.
So
relying on my memories, a little shaky.
I know, and I was just thinking about that as we were talking about it, but I think a couple of things that were kind of interesting is Wartburg was just 3 of 10 on 3rd down. And when I think about, some statistics that really stuck out, that's a big one. Both teams were perfect, 2 for 2 on 4th down. For the Thunder, Mark Forcucci threw for 228 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but, ran for 21 yards. Obviously, we talked about Matt Kreider had the 3 touchdowns. And then wide receiver Whit Jewett, he had a career day. 113 yards receiving on 9 catches. And then we talked about Dawson Rudd, 167 yards there on the ground. So, defensively, as I was looking at some of the total tackles, I was kind of looking at for Wheaton, Zeke Harris, who's, the number 1 leading tackler for the Thunder, had a pretty quiet day. Colin Moore, their DB, had 11 tackles on the day, and Mason Haas had 9 tackles. So a couple of really good days by them, and Peter Johannick had the forced fumble. And then, going to Wartburg side, who stuck out? Keenan Tyler. He's their leading tackler. He's at 124 tackles now for the season, but he had 15 there for the day. And, I loved watching it. Those are the types of games I remember they were a ton of fun to play in. I loved getting hyped up for those things. It was colder than hell. You couldn't feel your arms afterwards, but I didn't like to wear, I like to wear the cutoff right here at the elbow, and sometimes some gloves, but, so it was awesome to watch. Wheaton advances to face this hot DePaul team again on the road. And, DePaul holds a 2-1 series record over Wheaton, but the last time they played, and this is why I was texting you earlier, because I thought you had graduated a little bit earlier than that from North Central, but not quite this old. But top songs, the last time they played were "I Can't Get Next to You" by the Temptations and "Sugar Sugar" by the Archies. So we're going back to October 13th, 1969, the last time they played. So there's a few years in a drought. So maybe you were still a young guy at that point.
I was a baby, for crying out loud. Oh, you guys, you kill me, man.
I thought maybe that was your senior prom, dance music or something. But
yeah, that's I'll the girl I took to senior prom. I'll have to let her know you called her old. Hey, I'll tell you what. So I didn't say a lot during the season because Wheaton's a rival. I'm not going to want to wax poetic and give them a bunch of cred, but I had said several times throughout the season to people that Wheaton's a top 10 team. And, it's just my take on it. Even though North Central buried them 35-0, it's one of those rivalry games, and North Central gets, when they get fired up for a game, they just somehow find another level. And Wheaton was, they. I guess it's not really the benefactor, but they're the ones who felt the heat there that day. But outside of that, the other thing about Wheaton is they will always play to the end, and that's why they were able to close the gap with Mount Union. Mount Union had that game, under control, but I don't care if you're up 60 on Wheaton, they're going to play to get, every time they get the ball, they're going to try to score, but it's more than that with this team. There's some talent there. There's more balance than I anticipated. Unfortunately, while I was at the North Central game, the snow coming down was so heavy that I had my phone out a couple of times, and the snowflakes would just engulf it. And there was so much water after the snowflakes would melt on it. I just put it away. I couldn't track anything. I just listened to the score updates that the announcer was given, and a few other people were a little better and given some updates. But as it progressed, I wasn't surprised that, Wheaton was in that game. I thought the weather was going to make it lean advantage Wartburg much, much more. And we all know Wartburg's a tough place to play, but I think coming out of this, I think Wheaton showed that they are indeed a top 10 team. So, heading back to Naperville, I had a fun 81-mile drive up to Naperville from Indiana in the morning. Wasn't too bad. Pretty treacherous on the way back, though, let me tell you. It was a bit scary. But Winter just pretty much said deal with it for the day. It's kind of how it was. And we had 2 football programs out on the field at Benedetti Worley Stadium doing that. Hanover, North Central, it wasn't just played in the snow. It was through the snow. It was heavy. It was wet accumulation. It never stopped. At halftime, I swear there were 4 or 5 inches of snow on the ground, except for the yard lines that the crews kept trying to clean. And I think we have to do, a little bit of a shout out to, in the case of North Central, they had players that didn't dress, students. We had our AD, our assistant AD, and even the president of the college was out manning a shovel for the game. I don't know any other schools where that's happening, but that's pretty cool. GP was just named recently the president after being the interim for a little while. The guy is really, really cool. But they're out before sunrise, 4:30 a.m. The snow just never stopped, and it was absolutely crazy. But shout out to everywhere in the Midwest where you had people out there doing that. That's awesome. And shout out to the parents and all the support, the bands, the cheerleaders, dance teams, everyone that came out to support the team. I said everybody should get a huge shout out on that. So going to the game, the opening kickoff, it was pretty clear. There's a little debate I saw on X about what was the worst conditions. In the beginning, I saw a little bit of film from Wartburg. I knew that it was really rough out there. Some people are talking about up at River Falls, pitchers. I haven't seen the game, but pitchers, you could see the field. The field was dry. From what I understand, guys were making cuts and making plays. That wasn't happening in Naperville, let me tell you. You could not plant without slipping. It felt like one wrong slip could potentially end up deciding the game that when things started off, because it took a while to for players to get that footing. But first play of the game, it was exactly that. Hanover took off 47 yards, and that was pretty much the high point of their day. But, we got some guys on the outside that got pulled in, a couple other guys, there was just nobody there. But the speed that North Central has, they were able to take, catch up and take the guy down. But interestingly, that drive netted at the end of it 30 yards. So that was after a 47-yard run. Our defensive line, Bobby Medina, JP Sullivan, Renick, Oli, and then backed up by Danny Nuccio at linebacker, they had an incredible day, absolutely incredible. They were getting serious pressure. Rotabush all day long. He was able to sidestep, with the footing the way it was, and he was able to escape. But he was not comfortable back there, not once. And Hanover really struggled. Their punter and their snapper, I felt bad for the guys. They got 2 good punts off during the game. Outside of that, one of the 2 was the long snapper couldn't get the ball back to him, or the punter was dropping the ball. And so that created some real problems for them. On the flip side, North Central was perfect. Every snap and hold on the extra point, on the kickoffs, everything, the concentration was there to make the play. Hanover also was hurt in their first drive, 2 drop passes. It was just kind of that kind of day where you just had to have a higher level of concentration. And so they had a lot of miscues from the beginning that certainly didn't help them. But when North Central took over and got down into the red zone, their defense stood tall, forced North Central into a field goal attempt. And so it looked like things were going to be pretty rough for a while. And then, we had just a minute left in the first quarter, and Garrett Wilson hit Jack Rummel for 50 yards. They finally decided, hey, the heck with the weather, we're going to put one up. And it looked like North Central was going to be able to get behind their defensive backs whenever they wanted. So then Garrett Wilson picked up 8 yards himself. You looked at the first quarter, and Hanover had the ball for over 10 minutes, and North Central had it for less than 4. Yet North Central outgained them 77-50. And like I said, their first play went for 47. So when you started looking at the numbers at the end of the first quarter, it was telling a different story than what you were seeing on the scoreboard, and even maybe kind of, what you were seeing with your own eyes. But Hanover, they tried to answer. They got a couple of drives going, but they just weren't able to finish. Our D-line made some big plays, a couple TFLs that put them behind the sticks, and they weren't able to catch up. There started to be a lot of John. Hanover was really, their left tackle particularly was very, very vocal. There was one play, he was standing over our guy, Bobby Medina, was yelling at him. Bobby Medina got up, said something back to him. They threw a flag on Bobby Medina, and I'm like, what the heck? I mean, that's offsetting, if anything, But it was a little more chippy than I expected it to be. But, I guess, that's playoff football. Cortez Jones was getting under some people's skin. He's North Central's right tackle. He used to be a defensive lineman, so he's got a little different mentality. And if you ever watch North Central film, this guy is finishing blocks 10, 15, 20 yards downfield. Defensive ends, tackles, they don't like that. They get, a little testy when they're getting shown up like that, and some of the guys start coming to hit, their guy's defense is number 10, he comes down and gets in Cortez's face. Guy gets, an unsportsmanlike. Later, he got a second one, got ejected. It's just like, man, that's just not, how you want to. You don't want to be hurting your team like that. And North Central, they got a little mouthy. They got some calls, and I was like, you guys got to shut up and play, because this hurts your team, But anyway, halftime wasn't normal. They extended the halftime. It seemed like we had 2 halftimes because they had a couple of machines out there trying to clear the field. There was a lot of snow on that field. And
I saw one got stuck.
Yeah, that tractor, I don't know, that tractor might be from 1920 or something, but it would get stuck. The wheels, would just spin. And we're like, man, someone's got to, they got to.
So that's what you took to prom. Is that tractor?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I rode the bucket. But, so in all, I mean, the third quarter was explosive. It was crazy. We just we came out. We hit a couple of really big pass plays. We had a 1-play drive after a short punt, 31 yards. Tommy Skopna takes one of those little pop passes. Comes across to the right, turns around, crazy that he could do this, but reverses field, goes all the way back over on the left, 31-yard touchdown. And then the next drive is 2 plays, 2 big passes from Garrett Wilson, another touchdown. And then at the end of the third quarter, we block a punt because the punter mishandled it. Jalen Johnson picks it up for his second scoop and score on a blocked punt this season. And so 21 points in the third quarter, and it was over. People were just kind of wishing that the game would end because of the snow, and it was horrible. The officials seemed to have a different idea. They wanted to be out there for quite a while. A lot of conferences, and it seemed like for no reason. But so we've got lacrosse coming in next Saturday. Last matched up in the 23 postseason was a wild 55-42 victory for North Central. So North Central knows need to step it up, playing lacrosse, even though they've been wounded a little bit. Not a high scoring game for them this past Saturday, but there's some history. There's some history there that makes things a little interesting. I won't go into it now, but if you know, you know. So North Central will be pretty juiced up for that game, no doubt about it. But the weather was miserable, absolutely miserable.
David, I don't think that you were around in 1920. I know that it was at least 1955 before you graced us with your presence. So,
well, be sure to let Social Security know.
Yeah, you let them know. Don't tell them it was for me though, because I'm never going to see Social Security. So, hey, D3 Spread Option Crew, I just want everybody to know that we did have some technical difficulties. We talked to the spokesperson for them. They seem to be working it out. I believe, crew, correct me if I'm wrong, right now the plan is to pre-record, but that does not mean that we may not drop an announcement if we get it all figured out before you guys go to record. So, D3 Spread Option Crew, kiss my ass, Mikey, and take it away.
Yeah, the plan is for now, pre-record. If we can get the X situation figured out, then we'll announce a live stream. Sorry we couldn't get it done. That was the plan, so that's on us that we couldn't get it done. But appreciate everybody that tuned in. I think we had over 500 views this week, so we enjoyed doing it, and it's great to see that people are consuming the content and also enjoying it. We've got eight more games this week, right?
Yeah.
So 8 more games. Real quick, just a little sneak peek of the games. We don't have lines from both of our line providers yet, but Massey, if you look at them and kind of play with the numbers a little bit, some of the home and away teams are backwards, but as of now, it looks like we're going to have at least 3 or 4 games that are like around a field goal, maybe 4 or less. Which is great. And makes the show even better, makes it more fun because those are obviously really competitive games. And I do just want to mention this because I thought it was funny that Carlos said Susquehanna might be a 3-point road favorite at Eastern. It's going to be more like 23. I'm not sure people realize what an underdog story this Eastern team has been. I mean, this is crazy. Me and Mikey mentioned it last week. We both felt like I think we were both on Eastern to cover the spread against F&M. Both kind of felt like F&M would pull it out, but Eastern won. So this is far and away the biggest underdog story of the Division III playoffs this season. And they're going to be another huge underdog here, albeit at home, but at least a 20-point home dog. It's going to be a really fun one, Mikey.
Yeah, it is. Looking back at this past week, the second round of the playoffs, it wasn't too fun for either of us score wise. We were red hot coming into this week. We both just had our best weeks in the first round of the playoffs, but round 2 it really took it to us. We both went 6-9-1. We pushed on that Wheaton, which was -4. It just shows how dead on some of these spreads are. In fact, a lot of these spreads were really close. North Central was -34. That game they won by 32, so we missed covering that by just a hair. Lacrosse was a 5-point favorite that won by 2. Platteville -13.5 was 17. Johns Hopkins 16.5 was 20. So a lot of these spreads were really, really good. Head to head, we had 6 head-to-head games. We went 3-3 in those. Crew, you hit on Mount Union. Great pick. I don't know where my head was at with that. That was an easy one. Bethel 16.5. As soon as the second half came around, that one was pretty easy too. Great pick. Endicott +11.5 for you. another one that, felt like that was really comfortable all game long. They were kind of going back and forth. Shootout alert. We put up the little guns
Yeah.
on that one. Shootout alert, and that's what it was. Those teams were just exchanging blows all game. And then the ones that I hit on were John Carroll -9.5. That one was really comfortable. DePaul +16. That line
Great pick.
was, I mean, that line was just way, way, way too big. That should have been a 3-point line, and that's kind of what it ended up being. And then River Falls -36.5. I just can't get myself to bet against River Falls. Their spreads get higher and higher and higher. They had the widest spread this week, and they just keep covering them. And this one wasn't even that close. They covered that comfortably. So really, really good week. We both hit on Hope +5. Great picks. Susquehanna pick 'em. So now, we both together have taken Susquehanna to this third round here, the Sweet 16. So we've kind of been on that Susquehanna train, and I'm interested to see how that ends up this week. And then, like you said, we both hit on the Eastern. That was one that we kind of saw coming. We both missed on Harden Simmons, and we got to own that one. I mean, I don't know what we were thinking, putting any faith in the Cowboys after 25 years of disaster. That we should have seen that one coming. Barry -33. Not our best pick there. That wasn't even close. I missed on North Central, missed on Alma -13.5. Platteville played a really great game, and they were Alma was kind of covering that for a while, but it was just a matter of time. That game, statistically, when you broke it down, even when you watched the game, it wasn't even close. It was just a matter of time before Platteville covered that one. Springfield +16.5. We missed on betting on that triple option. I still don't hate that pick. I really don't.
You're
I
right.
think Springfield's a great team. Just missed that one, and then Monmouth +20. That one got away from us in the second half, but we saw some really good games, and we got to get better next week because 6-9, that's not good, crew.
Yeah, not our best week of work, but fun nevertheless. It's always fun to pick the spreads on these games and shine a light on these programs and players. That's really what makes it fun. Help provide some coverage. So we've got 8 more games this week. A couple of look ahead lines. I'm going to classify these as look ahead lines because they're not official. We still need to get our data from Hanson. Still need Massey to probably update their data and update the home and away stuff. A couple of interesting look ahead lines. I'm expecting Bethel, who will be hosting UW Platteville, to be very close to a pick 'em. I think that's going to be like around 1 point, 1.5 points, maybe even right on a pick 'em. We'll see. So that's in game of the week territory as far as odds are concerned. Wheaton at DePaul. I would expect Wheaton to be a favorite again here on the road, going to Indiana. Probably a 4-point favorite somewhere around there. I'd say is probably an appropriate look ahead line from the data that we're looking at so far. And then another game that I found this spread interesting. Mount Union, as good as they were last week, they're probably going to be close to a 2-touchdown favorite, probably anywhere from 10 to 13 point home favorite against a really good John Carroll team. So I'm not going to give my pick away for all these games, but I will say I'm definitely that's a game that I kind of think might be closer than two touchdowns. So yes, sir. That's what I got.
Yeah, and John Carroll, I mean, they were one of the teams that just absolutely they absolutely demolished a Randolph Macon team that was pretty darn good, top 25 squad, and John Carroll, they had no issues with the conditions at all. Nick Semtemfelter, we talked about him on well, both these shows, Voices and D3 spread option. And that's an FBS caliber quarterback playing Division III football, and he showed it again in the elements. 31 of 33 for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. The guy is he's over 80% completion percentage for the season now. I mean, he's an efficiency machine. And they played an outstanding game. On defensively, Randolph Macon is a team that they're ground and pound. They've won all season by running the ball. They run for 232 yards per game coming into this game, and they don't really try to pass it very much. They've only have 11 passing touchdowns all season, and John Carroll just totally stomped them. John Carroll allows just 35 rushing yards a game, and they allowed just 33 total to Randolph-Macon. So going below your average against an opponent like that, it's similar to kind of like DePauw. Those are both NCAC schools, John Carroll and DePauw, with crazy low defensive rushing stats, and they're both just they're doing it. They're still doing it, and that's really really impressive this time of year. So, John Carroll and Mount Union, and then River Falls and St. John's. I think those are the two biggest games of the week as far as I can see. I mean, I'm going to have my eyes on those as much as I can. I mean, I don't want to have to leave those screens too much because those are two outstanding games.
100% huge games. Some props I want to give real quick. First, I want to give props to Mount Union offensively. I have been hesitant to crown these guys contenders all season, but they are. These guys are contenders. Might have the best offense in Division III. So props to the Purple Raiders. They look as good as they have in several years offensively, to be honest with you. And then secondly, props to Wheaton. David told us, he told us the whole week, how good these guys were, and I wasn't really buying it. I really thought Wartburg would dominate the line of scrimmage. Early in the game, it kind of looked like they might, but I mean, there wasn't a lot of noise in those box scores. I mean, Wheaton won the game fair and square and drove down when they needed a touchdown and won the game. So, props to Wheaton, and good call, Dave, on calling that one. But yeah, other than that, Carlo and Matt, back to you guys.
Now, Cooper, are you saying Wheaton is your team of the week this week? Last week it was Springfield. I got a nomination there for Eastern. So who's your team of the week for the round of 32?
It's got to be DePauw. Got to be DePauw.
All right.
As far as that really surprised me and impressed me, it's got to be DePauw. There were other teams that looked great, Bethel, John Carroll, but obviously, I kind of expected those teams to look good. Same thing with North Central and Mount.
All right. Well, I believe if nobody has any housekeeping, I have one housekeeping thing, and then we can go to final thoughts. Mikey is losing to Dylan Kramer in the Dingo Talk playoff picks. It was really nice to see Dylan, brand new into the picks. He's going after the champ. And I was told to tell you, Mikey, that people don't worry about what they see in their rear view mirrors. Or objects may appear closer than they seem in their rear view mirrors. So that's Dylan's message to you. Matthew, I did not forget about you. I know that you have some Logan Hansen tisms for us, so hit us with them, and then we'll roll on to Josh and Mikey for final thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. When I pulled up Logan Hansen's game projections for this round, and because the D3 spread option crew, I was like, I want to take a look at what Hansen, because I know they use him as part of the lines. And what I thought was interesting is if you just using Logan's head picks, the win percentage head to head, you would have gone 12-4 this week. And I remember a couple of years ago, when I was talking to Logan about validating his projections and his scores and some of those things. I think he said somewhere, it's like in the 80th percentile, somewhere in that range. He's been pretty successful at. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Home teams went 11-5, and then 10 of the games were under their total, 6 were over. And what I thought was kind of interesting, because you're going back, you guys were talking about the Eastern game. Now, they were a plus 10 on their overall total, and the biggest swing is because, Eastern scored 18 and a half points more than their initial projection, which, again, I think that's pretty significant. But, man, what I thought was interesting is the overall total that stood out to me was the Bethel and Co game, because Bethel, again, just kind of turned it on. That was a plus 27 That was huge. And then the biggest under, which again, Hope and lacrosse. I mean, 9-7. That was 36 and a half points under. Like, my lord. So
Wow.
anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting if you took a look at why we enjoy and why we love what not only what the D3 spread option crew does for for the D3 world, but again when you look at Massey and you look at Hansen, I'd go and I'd take 12-4 all day long at the casino. So those are pretty damn good stats there. So.
And for the rest of you out there listening that don't understand that, don't worry. There's a couple people on this board. They might not admit that they didn't understand what Matt was talking about, but that section was for the nerds of the group that they like the sports and they like the mathematics and shit that go into it. I love the glasses push. And on that note, Mikey, Josh, let's hear what your final thoughts are.
Mikey, I'll let you go first.
All right. Well, piggybacking off of Matt there, talking about lacrosse and hope, I think that's a great place to start. 9-7. This is the team that David will see next week in lacrosse. This was a really, really interesting game because it was 0-0 at halftime. There was just a ton of defense. And anyone that's got a chance to watch Hope this year, they know about this defense. They know about Liam Danitz, who's one of the best defenders in the country, not only just the defensive player of the year in the MIAA, but he's first in the MIAA in sacks and TFLs, and he was all over the field, making a ton of plays in the backfield. Hope got a lot of pressure on lacrosse this game. It was Kyle Haas's first game back for lacrosse. He hasn't played quarterback for them in over a month now. And, he was a little rusty and the conditions didn't help at all. It looked like they had some really nasty swirling winds there. In Holland, Michigan, and that definitely played a factor in the game. Each kicker missed a kick. There was a missed extra point, I believe. It was just a really nasty weather game out there as well. Gabe Lynch was outstanding for them. He's getting healthier and healthier. This is the healthiest I've seen him since probably week 2 or 3 this season. He was the leading rusher in the conference until he went down with an injury where he missed about 3 or 4 games himself, and he looked. I mean, his cuts were really, really sharp in bad conditions out there. So that's a really good sign for them. It seems like lacrosse is getting a little bit healthier. I don't think they have enough to pull off the crazy upset. I would go as far to say that, because there won't be snow, North Central will actually have a wider margin of victory versus a better lacrosse team than they did versus Hanover, just because of not having that snow kind of holding their offense back. So tough draw for lacrosse, but that was a really fun game. Platteville had a great win. Talked about them earlier. Bethel with a great win. Kind of went under the radar a little bit because we really expected it, but River Falls totally laying it on Chapman. This game was over quickly. It was 34-7 at halftime, and it's just what you expect River Falls to do. But we kind of had question marks about how the Top Gun offense would play in the wind, in the snow, in the cold, in the conditions. No hitches at all. Sharp as ever. Offensive line did an outstanding job. Blahau's leading passer and rusher again, something that he's getting really good at doing. And what was really fascinating about this game was River Falls had 7 different players score touchdowns, and that's kind of how they run their offense by committee. They do not care. They don't have a leading receiver. They spread it around. They want everyone to touch it. Everyone's going to run the ball, catch the ball, score. And that was an excellent representation of their offense there. 7.3 yards per play in some nasty conditions against a really tough and physical Chapman team. That team was no slouch. They had some good players on defense, and River Falls just really wore them down. And the second half of that game, they were just running day one stuff. Inside zone, duo, just basic stuff, killing clock, trying to get out of that game healthy, and Chapman still couldn't stop it. So really, really fascinating games. I feel bad for where you're at right now, Josh. How you feeling?
I probably was remiss about not mentioning the Warhawk defense. in their performance because I they gave up a lot of long touchdown drives, weren't able to stem the tide. They did come up with a couple of big turnovers, including a pick six. That quarterback, only a sophomore, Scott Ballantyne, had only thrown 3 interceptions coming into the season. We picked him off twice, so we have 40% of his interceptions in the season. I mean, not something that you're going to hang your hat on, right? But it wasn't as bad as I made it out to be earlier. But you and I had kind of talked in the group chat, about, and there's people obviously that have talked about this, and it comes with every loss at this university that's won 6 national titles. It's always clean house or bring back Leipold or something to that effect. Somebody's not getting the job done. Bullis tailed off. Rindle's not the guy. I am really, really, really tired of hearing these people that think that you can bring back or find a coach that's going to lose 6 games in 8 years. That is completely unrealistic. You found a unicorn once. He put you on the map, even further than what you were, right? So there's now everybody thinks of Whitewater as one of the alphas in Division III football. There's the bar is unrealistically high for this program. So to think that, Coach Rindle in his 3rd year you're still playing with some of your old regime recruits, right? You were 11-2 the first year, you made the Final 8, and you lost to Wartburg in the last couple of minutes in Waverly in the playoffs your first year. 6-4 last year was a down year, didn't make the postseason. That's fine. Leipold also had a blip on his radar as well. In fact, 3 of those 6 losses came in one season. And I'm not doing comparisons. I'm just trying to give a little perspective. This year, 8-3, you made the playoffs, tough conditions, you played a good program, but people are calling out, you don't win the conference, you lose to La Crosse, you lose to River Falls, but it's like, look at your opponents, right? These teams have had all this time to catch up since Lance Leipold left. Like, it's not as top, bottom head, however you want to call it. The plane is so much more even now, and you're fighting for all these recruits. Whitewater's not just getting them because they have better facilities anymore. You see the palace they're building in Eau Claire. These teams have caught up, right? And in some cases, depending on the season, sometimes they've bypassed. Now you got to stay at the top. You got to make plays, but I'm really tired of trying to defend the program and tell people that their perspective that is way in the past, it's just not realistic anymore. Like, that time is gone. You're not going to get it back. Could Jace Rindle lead the program to a national title? Sure he could. Is he going to lead them to 6? Probably not. So, I don't want to hear any more of that. I just want to see steps taken forward. As far as this year's concerned, you had a sophomore quarterback. You played a lot of juniors. You played a lot of sophomores. These are the recruits that Rindle is starting to get into the program and into the flow of the offense and into the flow of the defense. I think the best years are yet to come. You see some of these recruits that have come in, that have already gotten playing time, that have ascended on the depth chart during the season, and some of the seniors that, maybe have not worked as hard to keep their job are getting bypassed. That's the nature of the competition at this university and in this program. So I love the fact of where we are right now. Do I think Rindle is a solid coach? Yeah, he was the D3 football player of the year. He was from a small town, Cambridge, Wisconsin, right? And he was one of the best defensive players the school's ever seen. He knows a lot about football. First-year offensive coordinator, several new position coaches this year. Can we just calm down and not call for people's heads all the time? This community can be so toxic at times, and rather than trying to rally and support the team and the people that are there and the players that are there right now, it's just ugly, especially after seasons come to a close like what happened yesterday. So it's really taken a toll. It's exhausting. I'm tired of fighting battles. I just want to be positive, and I want to do what I can to support the program and the broadcast that we bring to the fans and the families of these players and, the coaches' families as well. But man, it's just getting tiresome. It really is.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, you think in to relate it to Division 1 for fans, Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, USC, like Whitewater's that type of program. They're one of the blue bloods, one of the powers. And when you're not even winning a playoff game, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I have no dog
Yeah.
in this fight. You're going to get those sorts of things because the expectation, the groundwork has been set in stone in this program. And I think Rindahl will be the first one to admit that in 3 years he hasn't met expectations one time. 0 for 3. Stout had a win against him that they haven't had in 20 years. River Falls put him in the worst loss that the university has seen in God knows when. And these playoff losses. So that's the other side of it. I see both sides to it. I think in order to build a program back from either being poor or to where it once was, you have to have a coaching staff that sticks together. Specifically, the head coach. Assistants are going to come and go, but you got to have someone that's a consistent voice leading the program. That's the only way. I think switching out head coaches, it's not it's some programs can do it, but it's much more difficult. So I would definitely see your side of that as well. Looking at your game in particular, it's a three point game, but I thought DePaul was just a flat out better team. From a non-biased standpoint, I thought they're a flat out better team. They had 25-12 in first downs. Third down, they were 53% to your 33%. Rush yards, 175-20. Pound the rock, just 1 yard per carry. And then time of possession, they had the ball for 38 and a half minutes. If you
Yeah.
can't possess the ball, you can't win the game. And if you can't get first downs, you can't win the game. You can't convert third downs. They were just a better team, and maybe if the conditions were right, it would favor Whitewater. But I'm not so sure. I kind of thought the snow would play in their favor, and it really didn't. So yeah, Whitewater has a lot of question marks, and there's gonna be a lot of conversations about what has to happen because they're gonna replace a lot of great seniors. All those guys as good as anyone. There's a lot of really good seniors that are leaving that program.
Yeah, there's a couple up front on the offensive line, but again, you like your quarterback. As my broadcast partner said, the good thing about having a sophomore quarterback is he's a junior next year, and this is his first year as a starter. A lot of the receivers are coming back. You got to replace some pieces in the offensive line, but there's some good guys there. The defensive line, we play 8-9 guys. They're going to plug and play as probably the biggest loss on defense to me would be the linebacker Ethan Gallagher. He wasn't the defensive player of the year in the conference, although he would have gotten a vote from me. He was really, really, really good. He was a first team all conference guy. We had a first team all conference guy on defensive line who will be back as well. So to me, the foundation is there. The offensive line is probably going to be the biggest question mark to return. You've got your running back, you've got your tight end, you've got your fullback. There's a lot of returning pieces and a lot of guys that have gotten experience this year that are coming back. So if you can keep a lot of those, nobody left in the portal last year, right? That's saying something at a program like this. So if you can get a repeat of that and get in some of these new recruits and to push the players that are coming back into those position battles to come back, I really like the foundation that we have set. I like Coach Murphy as an offensive coordinator. We saw a very imaginative offense, more so than we have in any of our 4 years of broadcasting games. I'd like to see more of that. There were some times when things I thought were a little too lullish, and the offense kind of fell asleep. I'm hoping for more explosive things that we've seen over the last 3 years. Didn't have a very explosive offense this year. I'm hoping that returns next year, in addition to the already kick-ass defense we expect Whitewater to have.
Yeah, definitely. Last game I want to touch on before we check out of here is Monmouth and St. John's. Monmouth, one of the best defenses in the entire nation, regardless of conference, one of the best. They allowed just 84 pass yards per game. They got a big time wake up call to the upper half of conferences in this league when they went up to St. John's. And Trey Freeney, quarterback at St. John's, they run what's called a West Coast style offense, which means it's really fast paced. They're going to run a lot of short, quick, three-step type patterns, pass heavy, not going to let their quarterback get sacked a lot because the ball's coming out so fast, and that worked to a T. He threw for 387 yards in some horrible conditions, 6 touchdowns, and their all-conference wide receiver, Dylan Wheeler, 10 receptions, 144 yards, and 4 touchdowns. St. John's, River Falls next week. This might be a shootout where you're talking about a race to 40 type of game, and I can't wait for that one.
Now, before because we don't want to keep you any longer, we appreciate you sitting with us for this hour and listening to us. For those of you that just listened to that last segment, that's how you have a respectful disagreement of opinions and explain yourself clearly. Maybe, hey, I don't agree, but I see your point. Mikey, I play devil's advocate. I don't have a dog in the fight. These are all ways that you can have civil disagreements and not what I do to David and Mikey and yell at them and say mean things. And David keeps coming back. Mikey keeps coming back. Matt and Josh scare me. I feel like they can make fun of me a lot at this point. And again, crew, you're just – Josh and I were talking about it. We're waiting to get you to laugh. At some point before the end of this damn season, I am going to get you to break – even keel, and we're gonna get you. I will do it, or I'll have to set it as a goal for next year. But you see, that's just a cold look. Like it's just you just staring into my soul. What I'm feeling like. So I'm out. It's been fun. Appreciate all you guys. We'll see you next week.